Welcome to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a cafe au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 52nd episode of the SImple Sophisticate. Today I am sharing with you 15 things to do to not feel fat. And that's the key phrase we're going to hone in on to start today's episode off, that idea of feeling fat. But before I get into this list, I want to give you a preview of what this week's Petit Plaisir is. I have been asked by many readers what my thoughts were on Harper Lee's most recent novel, Go Set a Watchman, not only by readers, but also family and friends. And I have finally finished it. And with all the hoopla, I tried to take my time and really savor it and let it soak in. After reading much of the reviews in the book as well, I wanted to give it a thoughtful response. So I will have that response for you at the end of today's episode. So be sure to tune in if you're interested. But now let's get back to today's topic. As with everything in life, our weight is a fluid and ever dynamic number. And because of this reality, which, if we could be objective about it, is a very good thing, it means we have more control over our weight, after all, our health and our livelihood, than we sometimes realize. However, it just so happens that when we forget about this fact and take our healthy self for granted for too long, we can begin to not feel our best self. We can maybe feel uncomfortable in our own skin. Now, during this past spring, there have been a lot of changes and new experiences in my life, from book signings to traveling to new destinations around the country to meet the Simply Luxurious Life readers, working with contractors to get my house up to par so I could sell it, selling my house, finding and acquiring a new job, and then moving to a new town. And as diligently as I tried, I'm going to be honest, the stress and the reduction of my usual routine took me out of my healthy routine as well. I will admit it. I began to feel fat. The reason I use this statement, feeling fat, and why I put it in air quotes, is that often the phrase is uttered, but was I fat? And when I said that to myself, were any of us fat when we use this phrase? No. What, at least in my case, and from those that I have been in the presence of when they say such a phrase, is that we don't feel our best selves. That's what we're feeling. In other words, we know we can feel better in our bodies, and between the food we choose to eat and the fitness routine that isn't working or we aren't adhering to, we aren't doing our best, and we recognize that we need to adjust to something. That's a good thing. That realization is huge. Living simply luxuriously has never advocated for dieting, as Americans use the term, meaning elimination, odd combinations of food, and anything that we wouldn't continue to do once the weight was lost. My approach to eating, as talked about on the blog and the book, and as you can see in my recipes, is that moderation is key. Forget deprivation, and most importantly, eat real food. The key approach to eating well, and thus looking and most importantly feeling our best when it comes to our health, was talked about in episode 8 of this podcast. There are also a few other posts that I've written in the past that I'll provide links to that discuss this whole idea of how to eat and live well, so we can feel good in our own skin. Today, what I'd like to talk about is when you haven't even stepped on the scale, but you know, whether it is due to life circumstance or letting go of good habits, that you've gained a few unwanted pounds that leave you not feeling your best. This feeling can be remedied rather quickly, but not overnight. Most importantly, if you are someone who pays attention to how you feel in your clothes, listens to your body, and recognizes when it is energized or quite the opposite, you will most likely catch yourself slipping before anything gets too far gone. Now, let's dive into those 15 ways to eradicate the fat feeling as tried and tested most recently by myself and in the past with successful results. Number 1, be honest with yourself. For example, just sit down, admit it. Yeah, I guess I found comfort in food these last few months. Things have been really stressful and I wanted to find a place of calm, and maybe I found it in food too often. And you add what you need to add there, but be honest with yourself. Don't be overly harsh, just be honest. Remember, we're talking moderation, not deprivation. Number 2, set limits. Okay, so you know that you've had too many desserts this week, or you know you've had far too many sweets, or that the pasta dish was your go-to for every dinner. Start setting limits. Maybe it's only one pasta dish a week, or maybe it's back to that trick of I'm only going to have 2 to 3 desserts a week, and every night that I don't have a dessert, I'm going to have a chocolate truffle as your reward. Whatever it is, start setting simple limits, simple ways that you can adhere to. And I'm going to share some ideas right now in this list. So if you're wondering what limits you want to set, listen up. Here we go. Number 3, eat vegetables in at least 2 meals each day. Aside from the major benefit derived from vegetables, such as staving off chronic diseases such as heart disease, that's the prime example, eating vegetables provides your body with valuable nutrients such as potassium, fiber, folate, folic acid, and vitamins A, E, and C. As noted by the Dairy Council of California, broccoli, spinach, garlic, and tomatoes are even more impressive, as they are coined superfoods due to their additional benefits. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And when our bodies have the nutrients they need, and this is huge, and I thought this was very interesting, our metabolism will keep roaring at its optimal speed. But if it doesn't have the proper nutrients, it begins to slow down. That's huge. It's like a car. You keep the oil changed, you give it the right fuel, you take care of that engine. It's going to perform at its best. Our bodies are the same way. Give it the nutrients it needs, and it really will speak to you. I think that's what's interesting. When we really start listening to our bodies, we crave what our body needs. We need to just understand what those cravings mean and then go for the food that our body is telling us to go to. And that's really a language that we have to learn to know how to understand. And that may take some time. But if you really hone in on that, you can get pretty well versed in it. So number 3, eat vegetables in at least 2 meals a day. Number 4, eat lean protein once or twice a day. Proteins have a high thermogenic effect. And this is interesting. I think this is very important to point out and why protein should definitely be part of your diet. In other words, 30% of the calories the food contains are burned during digestion. If that's not motivation to eat more protein, I'm not sure what else I can pull out of the rabbit's hat. No, but seriously, make it a habit to have one source of protein in at least 1, preferably 2 meals each day. You will feel full quicker, which will stop you from eating anymore, but then you won't feel bloated the rest of the day. It's amazing the difference in what you eat. At least that's the way I felt, and that evidence with regards to the thermogenic effect is evidence to that as well. The lean protein options are endless, whether you are a vegetarian or a vegan or not. And on today's show notes, I have a long list of both, ones that are for vegetarian and vegan, and then one that is for those who do eat meat. So for vegetarian or vegan options, quinoa, buckwheat, soy, rice, remember to choose brown or whole grain, beans, legumes, and nuts. Almonds and cashews at the top of the protein list. Peanuts, not so much. But I do provide a link to a long list of other nuts that you may want to include in your snacks. Now, preferred protein options for those of us who eat meat: chicken, mahi-mahi tuna, pork tenderloin, turkey, the eye of a round steak. It's considered one of the leanest cuts of beef. Scallops, shrimp, tuna, salmon, but make sure you pick the right salmon. You want to choose either wild caught from Alaska or freshwater coho from the United States. Oysters and trout. Now that's, again, I know many listeners listen to me from around the world, so I'm speaking only for salmon with regards to the United States. But just be aware of how your salmon is caught, and that will make a huge difference in what pesticides or other unnatural things it may be exposed to if it's farmed. So just be really careful about that. So number 4 is to eat lean proteins once or twice a day. Number 5, give eating your full attention. Be mindful of what you're eating and what you're doing while you're eating. If you're driving, watching television, or attending a concert, you most likely are not truly enjoying or appreciating your food. And when you are mindful, you know if it tastes good or if you should not take another bite and waste those calories. So number 5, give eating your full attention. Number 6, reassess your workout schedule. make it fun again. Even with the best intentions and with responsibilities we love, the workout routine can be shortchanged. However, this should immediately be reconsidered, as we talked a few weeks ago in Au Courant Weekly, that Alzheimer's disease and dementia can be severely diminished if we exercise regularly and vigorously well into our years. So definitely start early, make it a habit, make it fun, and you'll find yourself burning calories when you didn't even plan on it. And you'll look down a few weeks later and be like, what? I can fit into those? Beautiful. So number 6, reassess your workout schedule, making it fun again. Number 7, select calorie-free drinks such as water, tea, and coffee. Green tea especially is a wonderful option to sip throughout the day, hot or cold, so it depends on the season, whatever you prefer. A recent study by the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that drinking 4 cups of green tea a day for 8 weeks actually reduced a participant's weight by 6 pounds. Okay, I know what I'm drinking tomorrow morning. Green tea. Number 7, select calorie-free drinks. Number 8, reduce consumption of simple carbohydrates. So long as it's real food, eat everything in moderation that you enjoy. So begin to eat less of milk products and anything made with sugar, such as candy, sweet desserts, and pastries. This is probably one of my downfalls, I'll be honest with you. I like my bread, I like my pastries, and I'm never going to take it out of my diet. But sometimes I have too much and I catch myself like, whoa, you don't need that many slices, or you don't need that pastry 3 or 4 times a week, maybe just on the weekends, whatever it is. So everyone has their crutches, and that pretends to be mine, and maybe it's yours too, and maybe it's not, and that's an easy fix for you. So number 8, reduce consumption of simple carbohydrates. Number 9, have a salad a day. Spinach happens to be my go-to salad choice, as it's a superfood, as I mentioned earlier in the episode. It is an anti-inflammatory and has been found to reduce the potential of cancer, as well as be a strong source of iron. So I say, why not choose a leafy green that packs a multi-powerful punch? I then toss it with my homemade vinaigrette, but there are many recipes for vinaigrettes. You don't have to use mine, but I will provide a link to mine. It's very simple. You are using extra virgin olive oil and I usually put in, about, if you're making it just for one serving, one salad, I usually put in 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, then a little sprinkle of pepper, and about a teaspoon or less, slightly less of Dijon mustard. And then you emulsify it and you whip it up real quick and there you go. It's very simple, but there's so many different vinaigrettes out there. I will provide again a link to mine, but if you have a favorite one, use it. Very simple. But if you don't like spinach, there are many different options for lettuce, and most grocery stores carry a wonderful selection, so just look around. Arugula is my other favorite, as I really like that peppery flavor. So 2 different options there, but again, those are my favorites. There are tons of them out there. Number 9, have a salad a day. Now, before I get to the remaining 6 ways to get rid of that fat feeling, I'm going to take a quick 1-minute intermission, and I will see you on the other side. Are you a new listener to the Simple Sophisticate? Curious about what living simply luxuriously is all about? Start at the beginning with the very first episode that focuses on the 8 pillars of living a simply luxurious life. It's the most downloaded episode of the podcast and the perfect way to discover how to live your best life. Visit www.thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast1 and discover what simply luxurious living is all about. Welcome back. We have 6 more tips for getting rid of that icky feeling when we just don't feel our best in our own skin. So number 10, don't forget the strength exercises. Be sure to include 1 to 3 days of strength training, and make sure you alternate them. Don't do them back to back in your weekly workout routine. as we're trying to jumpstart our metabolism, when we hit the weights or use our bodies as the weight, our bodies continue to burn calories long after we're done in the gym or off the mat in our homes. As discussed in previous posts that I will provide a link to on today's show notes, you don't have to go to the gym or have a gym membership to keep your body strong. One of the things that I do, I haven't gone to a gym in, probably 12 years, 11 years. And I used to be an avid gym goer when I lived in Portland in my mid-20s. I haven't gone for so many years. So what I did, and I mentioned this in my book and on the blog, is that I hired a personal trainer for one session, had her give me an outline of exercises that I could do at home or on vacation to maintain my strength. And I just use it at home, have a mat, have my dumbbells and any other accoutrements that I need. And I just pull that mat out whenever I need to do my strength exercises and wham, bam, no money down the drain. I'm done and strong. So something to consider. Number 10, don't forget the strength exercises. Number 11, eat whole grains. Start to reduce the pasta, but if you have to have a bowl of your favorite, choose whole grain options instead. In the morning, choose oatmeal or steel oats, my favorite, and brown rice for dinner. Why? The body burns twice as many calories breaking down whole foods. Interesting. Something to try. Number 11, eat more whole grains. Number 12, the takeout rule. I love this. So simple. Takeout is absolutely fine. We shouldn't completely nix the idea of takeout. I mean, I'm busy, you're busy. We have days where we need to eat well. We don't have the time or maybe the ingredients in our house. So I'm not bashing on takeout, as there are many healthy options that tie nicely in today's list. But once you bring home the takeout, do something very simple. Use proper dishes and silverware. Why? First of all, so you can see the portion size that you're about to eat, and then save the rest for lunch or dinner tomorrow. Don't put it all on your plate if it's more than one serving size. But also, it will slow down your eating. How does taking it out of the takeout boxes slow down your eating? Well, that takes us to number 13. Number 13 is to eat European style or with your opposite hand when you're eating with regards to your silverware. Now, a couple of years ago, I began eating with both a fork and a knife. And what I have found is that I eat slower. Initially, yes, it was because I was horrible at it and I'm not used to it. But even now, as I'm more comfortable with it, I find myself eating smaller bites and slowing down my eating instead of shoveling the food into my mouth. If that's not appealing, try eating with the opposite hand to slow down your consumption. Now, you may be wondering, what does she mean by European style? And one of my dear friends used that phrase, and it just simply made me smile. So whether that's the proper term or not, just let me know and tell me what the proper term is. I just don't know. So what I mean by European style is if you're right-handed, putting your fork in your left hand and your knife in your right hand and cutting your food for the size that you would like. So number 13, eat European style or with your opposite hand. Number 14, add heat. If you have a predilection for hot food, you are in luck. Capsaicin, the compound found in red peppers and many other hot food items, heats up the body, which melts extra calories. So opt for hot mustard, the hot sauce, or the tried and true hot peppers. Your waistline will thank you. And number 15, get a restful night's sleep. Part of my issue with regards to the spring feeling of was a shortage of sleep, especially when I was traveling so frequently, but also when my mind was racing with all the changes that were taking place in my life. It was hard to get my needed 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, keep in mind, when you're awake, our body needs energy, so it wants food because that's what's going to give it energy. But when it rests, it's not only detoxifying itself, which is a really good thing, but it's also not in need of calories to rev it up and keep it going. Now, here's an extra bonus. So that's number 15. Get a restful night's sleep. For you podcast listeners, I have an extra tip that I'm going to add to the list. Number 16 is incorporate yoga. Why? And it could actually just be meditation too. Studies have shown that when we practice yoga regularly or anything that gets our mind off of our worries and our thoughts and gets us to focus just simply on our breathing, we take our stress level down. And when we take our stress level down, we're reducing the cortisol level, which is adrenaline that's being pumped into our bodies, that ultimately slows down the metabolism. It slows down the calories being burned because it's the body, when it's stressed, thinks that it's in this flight mode and it's survival mode. And so it's storing calories more than it needs to burn them. So if you reduce the stress in your life, and maybe there's other ways that you can do this as well, but the study was done with yoga in this case. Practice yoga more regularly or meditate more regularly, and it will reduce your stress, therefore reducing your cortisol levels, therefore hopefully improving your metabolism. So that's your extra tip on today's episode that you won't find on the show notes. Quickly before wrapping up on today's topic, while the above 16 things to do are great ways to start feeling better in your own skin, I want to share 4 things not to do when you do feel fat. Number 1, don't obsess. I'm beginning with this one because it's easy to become obsessed with our weight. The culture, if we don't control or have a handle on what we're exposed to, can make us believe we are only our outer shells. Intrinsically, we may know that we are not, but we are rewarded for letting our mind be swayed. Rather, put into place habits and routines that will yield healthy dividends. In other words, design a healthy lifestyle gradually. You will see the results. Obsessing and fretting every minute will not make it occur any quicker, and it will ruin the present moment. Put your plan into play and then get out of the way. So number 1, don't obsess. Number 2, don't whine to your friends and family. While we do need our social support system, we may want to share with them that we're going to be watching our eating and workout habits. Make such a statement to garner support, not pity. If you sit down to enjoy a meal, at the end of it, don't whine about how much you ate. While it may help you in some odd way to say it out loud, you may ruin the experience for those you are dining with. So number 2, don't whine to your friends and family. Number 3, don't forget about what's important. Once you have put into place the steps needed to get your weight back on track, it is easier to stick to them when you direct your attention elsewhere. What do I mean by this statement? Focus on what needs your attention and get lost in your job, your daily schedule, your family, your friends, your goals. Before you know it, you will be feeling great in your skin. And number 4, don't forget how fortunate you are to have food to eat and options to exercise. The frustrating part about gaining a few pounds is that we've stopped paying attention to what we've been putting into our mouths, as well as how much we move our bodies or how little. The good news is we do have endless options of food to eat. If you live in any of the many countries with a rich food supply and duly endless ways to exercise. Start with the simple basics of what we are afforded, and it will help you put this feeling fat into perspective. Many people may label the feeling we're discussing today as a #first world problem, but I would argue that without a healthy body, we can't have a healthy mind, and without a healthy mind, we cannot live our best lives. It's a domino effect, and it starts with a realization that can be quickly remedied. And if we're able to quickly remedy that we're not at our best, it is a good sign that we are living in the present, that we are paying attention to our body and recognizing that we have much to give the world and are much better able to do this when we are able to perform at our best. Tend to these 16 tips. Allow them to become habits, routines, and then forget about your weight. In a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you will slip into a pair of your favorite jeans or that beloved dress and see that it fits exactly as it should. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you would like any of the links mentioned on today's episode, please visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast52 for today's show notes. Now stay tuned for this week's Petit Plaisir. In February of this year, it was announced that Harper Lee will be releasing her second novel. Now, typically, such an announcement is not such big news, but as fans of To Kill a Mockingbird note, she has only published one novel, and that one was published in 1960. So for this announcement, many fans were curious, excited to say the least. As a teacher who has taught this novel for more than 10 years, I was ecstatic with excitement when this news came out. I'm sure I drove my students crazy, especially prior to when we actually read the novel. They're like, why are you so excited about this novel coming out? And understandably, many people are skeptical about the timing of its release and the decision to publish it at all. But we may never know the answer to that. What I would like to do today is share with you my thoughts on Go Set a Watchman, the new novel that was released in the middle of July this past month. So here we go. I've killed you, Scout. I had to. And perhaps Atticus needed to be killed as well. At least the Atticus that young Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird imagined and described, and therefore we as readers came to adore as well. As Sam Sachs of the Wall Street Journal reminds us in his review of the novel, Atticus, as revealed in Watchman, having, quote, provincial convictions and bigotries, actually makes him a truer, more representative figure. But as many readers and those adoring Atticus fans who have professed they will not read the novel as to not ruin their idolized idea of what a respected lawyer's purpose can and should be, and what a person's good deeds can do, lose sight of is the reality. Abraham Lincoln, by our standards today, as stated by many revered historians, described his commentary, his own words, and certain beliefs at the time, racist. But does that require us then to either dismiss the actions put into place that gradually, albeit tortuously slow, led to a stronger, more unified yet diverse nation, or does it give us a truer picture of a human mirroring the time he was in, yet making decisions that would allow the baton to be passed on to others who would bring it ever closer to the finish line? Atticus, based on the climate of our modern United States, cannot be applauded for his belief of viewing Black citizens as backward people, and Jean Louise rightly points out his hypocrisy. Her felt betrayal, perhaps mirroring our own as readers, is palpable in their chapter-long row that, while having gaps and revealing itself ignorant for the time it was written before the civil rights movement unfolded fully, depicts something that To Kill a Mockingbird never contained. A scout standing on her own 2 feet and having the confidence to stand alone with what she knew to be right and true without seeking the approval of her father. One of the many lessons Atticus teaches Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird is to stand in someone else's shoes in order to understand them. While readers are never allowed to stand directly in Atticus's shoes, as Watchman is told in third person, Jean Louise finally sees Maycomb as it truly is, and therefore as her father exists within it. She is now thinking for herself, having cut the apron strings when she chose to go to New York City. Nell Harper Lee herself having done the same thing when she refrained from becoming a lawyer, at her father, Amasa Coleman Lee's urging, lost her father's financial support and confidence, and many biographers state that To Kill a Mockingbird and the depiction of Atticus was an homage to her father, or maybe a statement of defiant success. Why Atticus became the figure he did in To Kill a Mockingbird from the first draft we are now all confounded by today is something we will never know for certain. But the publisher wished to sell books, and they knew their audience, what the country needed or what the majority of the country wanted. Remember, this book was published in 1960, was not someone as we would have expected to have existed in the South, such as the Atticus we have recently been introduced to. But instead, with the final draft of To Kill a Mockingbird, they gave the country what they thought it wanted: hope. As Jean Louise points out to her father in chapter 17 of Watchman, quote, "You deny them hope. Any man in this world, Atticus, any man who has a head and arms and legs was born with hope in his heart," end quote. And perhaps the publisher knew this. Would it have sold as many copies as it has and earned the Pulitzer? I would garner to say no, for exactly the reasons the publisher edited and encouraged her to write it as they did. The personal lesson, aside from the racist tensions that fuel the frustrations with once beloved characters, is the relationship between child and parent. Atticus still did raise Scout to become the Jean Louise that ventures off and explores the world, eventually returning to realize her sweetheart Henry Clinton and her father view and therefore live in the world in complete contrary views than she. He never apologizes for the upbringing he provided, even though she seems to want his concession in their bellicose argument, because it is her upbringing that allows her to stand strong in her convictions. Uncle Jack, who is much more developed as a character in Watchman, acts as Jean Louise's voice of interpretation of Atticus, points out what we are all guilty of when it comes to Atticus, quote, fastening our conscience like a barnacle onto your father's conscience. He points out to her that, quote, as you grow up, when you were grown, totally unknown to yourself, you confuse your father with God. You never saw him as a man with a man's heart and a man's feelings. You were an emotional cripple, leaning on him, getting the answers from him, assuming that your answers would be his answers, end quote. Not everyone evolves into thinking for themselves. Rather, to be safe, many hang on to what a religion, a community, a parental figure, or mentor has molded and instructed. Even Jean Louise points out that she thought after her undergraduate studies that she had evolved as she should, successfully making this break, which seems to be when the third person of To Kill a Mockingbird takes place, interestingly enough. But it wasn't until she returned to Maycomb at the age of 26, which is when Watchman is set, when she truly detaches herself from her father. The second part of the equation that is necessary for both parties to move forward is to do what Atticus does. Allows her to separate herself and still remain in a loving relationship with her. It must be pointed out that as she storms off after their now much discussed argument, he says, I love you. And while Atticus, who lives by the law and defends it to its teeth, for example, in Watchmen, Tom Robinson was acquitted. He is unable to do what Martin Luther King Jr. states in the letter from the Birmingham jail we all must do with unjust laws. Quote, I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law. Perhaps Jean Louise takes the baton where he leaves off. Nell Harper Lee may have never meant for Ghost at a Watchman to be read by the millions it has been this summer, but she reassured this fan why I adore Scout all the more. Perhaps Scout, rather, should I now say Jean Louise, will become the Atticus we much adored. And from now on, instead of asking the question, what would Atticus do? We should inquire instead with, what would Jean Louise do? If you would like to read this review, it will be on the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast52. And while I typically don't dive in so deeply into book reviews, I felt this book definitely warranted it. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this book if you have read it as well. Now, many people have said this book could not and will not be a classic because if it wasn't for To Kill a Mockingbird, we wouldn't be talking about it. And they're probably absolutely right. But the gift of literature, good literature, successful literature, is that it prompts readers to discuss, to talk, to contemplate deeper, profound issues. And in that, this novel has succeeded. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable and thoughtful. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast, where I'll recommend a book, a film, a recipe, or from time to time introduce you to an expert who offers insight into how to live simply luxuriously. Anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonjour!